Hi, my name is Alyssa and I like to talk about movies, and today we are going to be talking about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. This is a remake and in some ways a reimagining of the 1922 silent film of the same name. If you love cinema history, then you probably already know about Nosferatu. It is the movie that introduced vampires into cinema. It's also like a very defining work of the horror genre. In fact, I would even argue that it defines part of cinema in a way. Or you probably know the movie because of this clip.
Nosferatu!
It was my introduction as well. You know, we all have to start somewhere with our education. And while the German silent film was technically an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, it reimagined the vampire as being a very tall, pale, pointy-eared, still rich person. Nosferatu did have a little bit of legal controversy. The film got caught up in a bunch of copyright disputes, which led to a court ordering that all copies of the film be destroyed. But obviously that didn't happen, and anyone who got their hands on a copy was told to destroy it, and yet they never did. And that's how you keep art alive. I tend to get really nerdy about films that really shaped the early days of cinema, especially the horror and fantasy genre, because hello, I am of a certain demographic that was deeply defined by Twilight, and therefore I love all things spooky vampire-esque adjacent. Interview with the Vampire shout out, woo, love that movie. Don't tell me it's bad. I know it's camp, but guys, straight men not trying to be homoerotic with each other? Cinema. I also am a big fucking nerd for gothic literature, so I am the perfect audience for this. But Nosferatu is required reading for anybody who says they're a fan of horror or just a cinephile. I do not know as much as the occult as Eggers does, and while I love that for him, truly, fully, I feel like some of the things that are happening in this movie really fly over my head for a while. But none of that really matters. What matters is how we got to Nosferatu. Also, if you're new here, hi, hello, how are you? Consider subscribing. It's free. I do this every week. I just yap about movies. And if not, that's fine. I'll just bite you. Eggers is a modern day horror auteur. He is no stranger to the occult. He has tackled witches, Tales of the Lighthouse Keepers, and even dabbled with Norse mythology. But none of you saw that movie, so go watch it after this, I guess. It's actually very good. I highly recommend it. And it's shocking to almost nobody who's followed his career that he wanted to tackle a vampire story, no less a remake of a forgotten classic. His mission was simple: return the creature to its roots.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you.
In his article that he wrote for The Guardian, Eggers was telling us that he wanted to return the vampire to its folkloric origins, which were told and written by people from the Balkan and Slavic regions in Romania, who believed that vampires did exist in one way or another. The folklore back then saw the vampire as an undead corpse rising from the grave that was stuck in this terrifying state of decay. These creatures, much like other folkloric monsters that do exist, came to existence as blame for a disease that took hold of people or communities, or for unexpected phenomenons that are happening. Surprisingly, these vampires didn't always drink blood, but instead suffocated their victims to death or just spread plagues and diseases. Other vampires were just deeply bricked up beyond the grave and would often come back to see their widows and kill them with too much vitamin D. But there were some who did drink blood, don't get me wrong, there were some. And when they did bite, they would often choose the juiciest places on their victims, i.e. the heart blood or the chest. After the vampire became a well-known folkloric legend throughout Europe, new mythologies around the creature began to take shape through stage productions and literature. Nosferatu is credited with being the first film that brought the vampire to the silver screen. But it would be Bela Lugosi's Dracula that would become what we thought of when we pictured a vampire. They're seductive, they're evil, and they're rich. And throughout film history, we got many different types of vampires that built and reconstructed what vampirism symbolized in our entertainment culture.
This is the skin of a killer, Bella.
They're all similar, and that's because they all trace back to their creator, Orlok. Yet none of them could ever be him. Enter Eggers' stage right. Wanting to drive a stake through the hot vampire lore that audiences have become way too familiar with, Eggers was ready to remind audience why the vampire is scary. And let's be honest, kinda hot. And what he delivers is true gothic horror, and a vision so realized that I feel like at some times I'm on a foreign planet watching a master at work. And to be fair, I'm a bit shocked by how tight this movie is. I'm both in awe and so shocked that this movie is a commercial hit. It's weird. It's so weird. But maybe that's a good sign. And I'll take it. I'll take a good sign. What is the source behind my shock and my bewilderment of Nosferatu's crazy success in America? It's complicated. So let's take a look at the plot and understand what makes a vampire so dang scary. So, spoiler warning, I am about to break down the entire plot of Nosferatu. If you just want to hear my grade on this movie, I have timestamped it below for you to just jump there. That's going to be spoiler free as well, so we're good. Okay, so before we get into the plot points, let's meet our cast of characters. We have Thomas, played by Nicholas Hoult. Oh! Holt is playing a very eager solicitor trying to get enough money to give him and his new wife, Ellen, the good life. Ellen is played by one of the most ethereal it girls out there right now, Lily Rose Depp. Am I still traumatized by the events of The Idol? I'm just a freak. Why, yes. But I cannot deny that there is something just extremely captivating about Miss Lily Rose Depp, especially as Ellen. And let's be honest, this performance is super difficult and super physical, and she is giving everything so we can live. What you need to know about Ellen is that she is essentially, unfortunately, at fault for reawakening Nosferatu, and he begins to plague her mind with sexual and erotic dreams. Evil. And when I tell you that I had to do a double take when Mr. Friedrich, i.e. Aaron Taylor Johnson, showed up on my screen, I was dumbfounded. Maybe you forgot, and it's totally cool if you did, but Craven the Hunter is still playing in theaters. Oh, you know, the Aaron Taylor Johnson Sony Spider-Verse superhero movie that is just as bad as Madam Web, but even more forgettable, that is flopping the house down right now. Yeah, that was playing next door to my screening of Nosferatu, and I was like, Mr. Taylor Johnson, what are you doing here? Emma Corrin is playing Taylor Johnson's wife, Anna, and they have two adorable little girls together. I'm not gonna lie, I really do love this family. It makes me very happy to see them on screen every time. Willem Dafoe is playing this Van Helsing type-esque character with an insane name that I am so sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce it, but it is Professor Albinhart von Franz. And he loves cats. Throughout this entire video, we're gonna call him Von Franz because I cannot say that full name. Also, our favorite character actor, Bill Skarsgård, is back. We love to see him. He is playing Count Orlok. He is cooked and oozing from a flesh wound that is everywhere. And boy howdy, is there something about him that just gets the engine purring. So now that we know the cast, let's get into the shenanigans. So the film opens with Ellen crying, praying, and throwing up, asking for someone to come and end her loneliness. Ellen's a bit of a weird girl. She's not like the others. Have you ever seen her without that stupid hat? No. But she has been cursed with these occult senses, and she's not always great at being quote-unquote normal. So society has kind of shunned her, hence why she's asking for a friend. But uh-oh, she has summoned something from beyond the veil. This deep, gravelly voice is like, you. And Ellen, oh boy, is she smitten. She is so smitten that she gets up out of bed and she sees a shadow of a bald man in her curtains, and she's like, yeah. And then the man starts mind seducing her. This shadow man, i.e. Orlok, is rizzing Ellen up so fucking hard that she starts levitating. He leads her out to the garden, and then we get this blink and you miss it kind of jump scare of Orlok on top of Ellen, like she's a woman in Henry Fuseli's The Nightmare. And you guys, things are not looking great. Ellen starts having a seizure, and she's looked like she's experiencing something kind of sexual. So this cold opening gives you everything you need to know. It's spooky, it's scary, it's erotic. And then the music builds this horrific, blistering orchestral climax that would bring Beethoven to his knees in torment. Whoa, okay, iconic if you ask me. Years later, Ellen wakes up from a nightmare and she sees that Thomas is already getting ready to go off to the office, and she's like, but what about moi? They are newly married and have this cute little kitty cat named Greta, but you know, they are not wealthy, as some would say. And Thomas really wants to take on more at his job so he can provide a big, lavish life for Ellen. He wants to provide, and we cannot fault him for that. I will also mention that Thomas is running throughout this fictional German town looking like Kermit and Muppet Christmas Carol, and I love that movie, and I love his tiny frog son. After showing up a little bit late for work, Thomas's boss, Herr Knock, is like, hey, I got this really unusual job, but it has a fat payday. This job includes going to the client's house to finalize his purchase of a ruined manor in their fictional town. Thomas is a bit weary of all this, but he's like, you know what? I'll do it for Ellen. I'll do it for her. And he's like, where do I have to go? And Herr Knock is like, oh, just Transylvania. I went on Reddit to see what people were doing with the math of how long this trip would take. And Thomas says it's going to take them 6 weeks to do this whole thing back and forth, solo, mind you. But everybody on Reddit was like, at minimum, it would take him 3 weeks to get there. Maybe minimum. And that's with a horse. Mind you, I'm not there yet. Spoiler. But he doesn't have a horse the whole time. It's gonna take him longer than that. It's gonna take him longer than 6 weeks, girlfriend. Let me just be honest. But all this to say is that Thomas took the job and he breaks the bad news to Ellen by giving her some dying lilacs and going, "I'll see you in 6 weeks, girl." Ellen is rightfully pissed off. She doesn't want Thomas to go for quite a few reasons. For one, when he's around, those disturbing erotic dreams that she's been having kind of go away. And Ellen has a very complicated relationship with these erotic dreams. While yes, they are terrifying, she's also like kind of into it. But that's immoral for a woman of the 1800s. No, she can't be turned on by sexual ideas. The second reason she doesn't want Thomas to go is because she just has this like bad feeling that something's about to go wrong. Hoping to get him to stay, Ellen tells Thomas about her nightmare that she's had where she's marrying death and that she has never felt so happy. Thomas is like, "Oh, wait. That's not." But he's like, "It's only a 6-week journey. Let's get you over to some friends so you could just stay with them so you're not alone and I feel better." This is how we meet Friedrich and Anna. What you need to know about Friedrich, he is rich because he inherited his father's docking company. And so he's just in control of the docks. Good for him. We love it. Friedrich is pumped that Thomas is going on this big, bold adventure and is gonna get a fat paycheck. He also tells Thomas that he and Anna are expecting another baby. Congratulations. Thomas takes off on his great grand adventure and lands in what I can only describe as modern day Ohio. Also, Ohio, can you explain to me why your billboards are so far away from the highway? Like, what is that billboard doing in the middle of the field? I do not understand. Somebody please tell me. After traveling for a while, Thomas shows up to this rocking village that has a ton of people dancing outside in the snow. And then he walks into what I can only describe as the worst ventilated building in all of cinema history. Like, it is so smoky. Like, my eyes were just irritated looking at it. Thomas is like, "Oh my god, everything's so different here. It's not like Germany." But Thomas like puts all his like weirdness aside and he's like, "I'm just gonna sleep through the night. Tomorrow is a big day." During the night, he wakes up to some noises and he's like, "What is this?" He opens his window to see a nude woman riding his horse into the woods. And he's like, "Wait a minute. That's my horse." But anyways, the Romani people stab a giant stake through a corpse that was actually a vampire. And Thomas is like, "Oh my god." Hard cut. Tommy Boy is now waking up in his bed and he's like, "Whoa, that was a crazy dream." But then he looks down, boots covered in mud. And he's like, "Oh, what the heck?" Things get kind of worse when he walks outside and everybody is gone and they stole his horse. Dismissing the weirdness, he's just like, "Okay. Well, now I have to walk the rest of the way to Count Orlok's castle." Night has fallen, and we get my favorite visual moment of cinema in 2024. This ethereal, ghostly snow is falling, and a ghost carriage shows up on the path that Thomas is walking. And Thomas gets in without a second thought. Never get in the ghost carriage. After a few camera pans and what I can only describe as 8.5 editing, Thomas is at Orlok's castle, and he's like, "How did I get here?" And that is cinema. That is like good visual storytelling. And guys, that's what makes me love movies. Thomas is like super late and Orlok is upset. He's just like, "Harump, harump. I had to put all my workers and helpers to bed because you showed up so late and I had to open the door myself." Ooh. Orlok immediately has no time for Thomas. He is sassing him, disappearing around corners, and then also just like forcing Thomas to like sit by the fire and kind of mind manipulate him as well. And Thomas is trying his best to keep it professional because he's on the job. But he accidentally slices his thumb and he's like, "Oh, fuck." Orlok is just like, "I want that in my mouth." This entire fiasco causes Thomas to pass out, and honestly, same. I would pass out too. I'd be like, "This is a lot. I think I'm just gonna clock out for the day." The next morning, Thomas wakes up to find that there are some bite marks on his chest, and he's like, "I want to go home." To say that Thomas is having a bad time would be like the understatement of his life. But damn it, guys, he has a job to do. He meets up with Orlok in his office, and they are finalizing some documents. When Orlok clocks this like little locket that's hanging around Thomas's neck, and he's just like, "Give it to me. I want it, please." Thomas hesitates, but then he gives Orlok the lock. And Orlok is going feral on this lock. He starts sniffing the piece of hair that Ellen put in there. And he's like, "I'm sensing some notes of lilac." Thomas is like, "What? What's going on?" And he's like, "No, nothing. Just sign here on this document that you cannot read because it's in a different language." Thomas hesitates. He's like, I don't know know about that. But then Orlok is like, if you sign now, I give you this giant thing of money. And Thomas is like, well, I need that money to give Ellen a good life. So yes, I will sign this document. And Orlok is like, yay, we're neighbors. Thank you so much. And Thomas is like, oh, wait, great, I did my job. I'm gonna leave. I'm not feeling well. I think I should go. Orlok is like, no, you should stay if you're not feeling well. I'll take care of you. Thomas is losing his goddamn mind in this castle. He's in a labyrinth of his own torment, and he's opening up doors left and right, trying to find a way out when he stumbles into what I can only describe as a coffin room. It's not like a tomb situation. It's literally just a room with some windows and a bunch of coffins in it. He walks to the back of this room and he opens up one of the most ornate caskets I've ever seen. And would you guess who's in it? Guys, it's Orlok. He's just like, Thomas has taken a page from the Romani's book and he's like, I'm gonna stake this man in the heart. But this is not Orlok's first rodeo. As soon as a little bit of overcast happens, he pops up, slaps Thomas, and he's just like, I'm gonna eat you. Thomas Scooby-Doo runs away, and Orlok and his demon dogs are on the prowl. Thomas, with little to no choice, jumps out a window and falls into a river that's like 100+ feet below him. Cut to Ellen, she's waking up in a panic because she thinks Thomas is dead. But everyone is like, girl, no, you're just overreacting. It's fine, stop freaking out, please. But Ellen has a right to be concerned because her erotic nightmares have come back with a vengeance. She's telling Anna this on their walk along the beach, and Anna's like, okay, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm pregnant. Also, I'm deeply obsessed with the idea of having a cemetery on the beach. Is it practical and sensible? No, but it's giving gothic coastal grandma vibes, and I can't help but love that. Grandma got washed out into the ocean. That's what you get for having a coastal cemetery. It's chic, but it comes at a cost. But people start to take Ellen a little bit more seriously when she starts sleepwalking because she's lured in by the voice of her gothic boo that's like miles away. But then she starts having seizures and shouting, he's coming. Like, oof. Guys, Friedrich and Anna are having a bad time, simply because there's a woman having like a demonic possession issue right now in their house. Dr. Willem Sievers can only chloroform Ellen to keep her to calm down, and he pulls Friedrich to the side and he's like, hey, maybe we should talk to my mentor, Von Franz, because this entire situation is deeply peculiar. But before we can meet Von Franz, I fear we must check in with Herr Nock. Unfortunately, he has gone a bit mad and started biting people and biting the heads off birds and stuff. So yeah, they locked him in a cage underneath the hospital. He goes mad because, I hate to break it to you guys, he is under the possession of Orlok as well. He is possessed in a very similar way that Ellen is, where he's just like, goes into these fits and he's like, he's coming! Which has led to one of my favorite things that I've ever seen that like summarizes this entire movie, which is the theater signage promoting the showtimes for both Queer and Nosferatu, so you get Queer Nosferatu. Bi visibility in cinema matters. Okay, now we can meet Von Franz. He's a super smart professor kind of guy who's been ostracized in Switzerland because he believes in these occult ideas. He also loves the kitty cat and has about a dozen of them. Von Franz agrees to meet with Ellen and is immediately just in love with her cat Greta. He's like, kitty kit. After a quick little chit chat, he's like, yeah, she's possessed. And while this is all happening, Knox does rip out a guard's throat and escapes prison. So a few nights pass and guess who shows up? Thomas. How did he survive the Great Fall of 1838? Well, I'm glad you asked. Some nuns had found him like washed up on the side of a river and decided to take him in. If you want the whole backstory on that, go watch The Black Narcissus. I do not have time, we must move on. Thomas is back in town, but he is still in pretty rough shape. But this helps Ellen to kind of relax a bit and like put those erotic nightmares at bay. But Friedrich is having a very hard time. Possessions, traumatized friends. The children are now awake asking if there's a monster under their bed. What is next? Oh, there's a ship carrying a lot of stuff from Transylvania, and it just crashed into the docks. Oh, and the entire crew is dead? And there's 100 of plague rats escaping and now running through the streets of our town? Cool. No, that's fine. Yeah, no, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. While I do not ascribe to the belief that all rats are evil, these are plague rats, and the plague rats are evil, so. Also, do note that that ship was carrying Orlok and all of his stuff, so yeah, Orlok is in town. He really saw Thomas jump from his window and he was like, oh, great. Time to move. Things are looking grim. And guys, They're only gonna get worse. Knox finally links up with Orlok, and Orlok is having none of this man. He is smacking him and throwing him around just because he thinks Knox is clingy. And like, I am so sorry, Orlok, but did you not just move a few countries over so you could be with this girl that you've never seen before? The next day, Von Franz is looking through the bodies on the ship, and he figures out that there is a vampire in town almost immediately. He's like, this is the work of a Nosferatu. While all this is happening, Orlok is watching Thomas and Ellen like a little freak, and he's like, your born shall not survive me. And this is where I think he needs to take a beat and realize he's being a bit of a homewrecker. He's already messing with Thomas, making him recoil anytime Ellen touches him, which is not what you would want from your partner, I will say. And then Ellen is physically hurt when Thomas like throws her off of him. Anna puts her kids to bed and she is heading into her room when all of a sudden she senses something and she goes, what is it? And she takes a step forward and then, Ellen pops out of the darkness and she's like, Ellen, thank God it's just you. Ellen is like, hey, is Friedrich home? No? Can we have a slumber party tonight? Just the girls? Anna says yes, because she's a good friend. And Friedrich is gone. He's very busy with the plague. In bed, Ellen is playing with Anna's cross. And Anna's like, you know what? I'm gonna gift it to you because God is with us now. With us forever. With us always. This is really giving me Lucy Dacus home video vibes. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, please educate yourself with one of the best albums of 2021. Also, there's a song called Lydia Wears a Cross. I think it fits in this moment as well. Someone give me a fan cam of like Ellen and Anna to that song. I will be forever grateful. But later that night, Ellen wakes up and she's like, what's going on? And she comes face to face with Orlok for the first time like ever. He's like, it is in your nature to be drawn to me. And she's like, no, I love Thomas. Orlok retorts with, love is inferior to you. You are not of humankind. Turns out she's this like enchantress. Turns out she's an enchantress. And oh, get this. Remember that gold that Thomas took earlier from Orlok during that whole housing deal? Yeah, apparently what he signed and took the money for was to sell Ellen to Orlok. But the catch is that Ellen has to give herself willingly to Orlok because I guess this time consent matters to him. I don't understand his priorities, you know? Ellen was like, oh, I can say no? Well then, yeah, no. And that makes Orlok very pissy. He becomes the biggest piss baby I've ever seen. And he's like, I'm gonna give you 2 more nights to give yourself over to me or I'm gonna kill Thomas. Okay. Ellen screams in protest, but then she wakes up. She's back in bed, but where's Anna? Oh, you know, she's just over there on the floor with rats crawling all over her body. You also hate to see that Orlok is using these plague rats to suck people's blood, which explains why everybody in the town is dying from the plague. The next morning, the doctor is visiting Anna, and she's recalling this terrible nightmare that she had to everybody, including Friedrich. And she's not bringing anybody comfort when she's telling this nightmare story because she's like, I actually wasn't having a bad time. It was quite erotic. And then she starts laughing and crying and asking Ellen for advice, and Ellen's like, girl, I'm not the person to look at. Friedrich is at his wit's end and he's like, I think Thomas and Ellen, you should leave. Like, get out of my house now. Ellen's upset because she's like, okay, everyone's about to die. We should all stick together. And he's like, I can't look at you. Get away. Get away. Get out of here. While Ellen and Thomas are moving back to their OG residence, Von Franz and Sievers are searching through Knox's place for any clues that could like lead them to the Nosferatu. When they find some pretty damning evidence. They find a book with an evil eye, some notes written in a secret language, and ooh, what is this underneath the rug? Oh, a giant pentagram. Von Franz immediately clocks the evidence and he's like, got it. We need to go talk to Friedrich and also keep an eye on Ellen and Thomas because they are connected to all of this somehow. Yeah, about that. Friedrich is like, oh, I kind of sent them away. Sorry, I guess. So what is the gang to do? Let's go check in with Ellen and Thomas. Oh my god, what the heck, girlfriend? This scene is so funny. Ellen was basically just trying to explain to Thomas like what Orlok has been doing and that he's just like a jealous ex-lover back for revenge. But then Orlok possesses Ellen and she just starts laying into Thomas. Like, it is very embarrassing. She's like, you can never pleasure me like Orlok does. This then possesses Thomas to get bricked up and do the deed with Miss Ellen. And she is loving this. She's like, yes, let him see us. Girlfriend, no. And she starts licking on Thomas's vampire bite and he's just like, what the heck? He looks down. Oh my god, Ellen has blood pouring out of her, like, every orifice of her face. And he's like, I gotta go. But wait, Thomas, don't. That's what he wants, Thomas. Stay put. And Thomas knows it and he's like, I'm gonna stay with my wife, god damn it. Ellen knows that Thomas will die if she does not go with Orlok. This is quite a predicament. This is a pickle, if you ask me. Back at Anna and Friedrich's house, things are getting worse. Anna wakes up to find Friedrich sleeping in bed with a gun. That's fun, I guess. And then the little girls start screaming their heads off. Anna can't wake up Friedrich because he's under some sort of spell or whatever, and so she has to run in. And guys, I hate to tell you this, Orlok has drained the little girls and they are now dead. Anna, shocked with grief, is just like, there is nothing I can do anymore. And Orlok is like, you're right. I'm a bite. R.I.P. to Anna and those two little girls. Simply because this is the plague time, they gotta bury those bodies ASAP. And Friedrich is not doing well. Distraught and not thinking with logic because of, grief. He starts to take out his anger on von Franz, and he's just like, you're the reason the plague is here. Everything got worse when you got involved. It is your fault, obviously. But brother, I hate to tell you this, look a little bit beyond the nose. There's more at stake going on. Like, let's try to figure out how to stop all these deaths that are happening in your town. But don't worry, that's why we have Thomas here. And he rips open his shirt and he's like, look, Friedrich, it's a fucking vampire bite. Back at his estate though, the boys are talking about a plan of attack. Their plan is to go over to Orlok's little manor that he has in town and stake him where he sleeps. This at least brings some hope to the gang, and we really love that for them. That's what they need in these dark times. But what if it doesn't work? They never thought about that. They really didn't. That's why Ellen is here. Ellen has a plan, and she talks to von Franz about it, and he's like, I agree with your plan. I think it's a good one. I will keep Thomas away so that way you can do what you need to do. All right, girls, it is game time. The third act, if you will. Let's get into it. Well, shit's already hitting the fan because Friedrich decides to be a sad wife guy in a Victorian novel and fuck his wife's dead corpse. At least that's what it looks like. Apparently the script says that he goes and embraces his dead corpse of a wife and kisses her and then dies from the plague. But I read Wuthering Heights. I know what's going on. I've read enough Victorian literature to know that people were fucking corpses, or at least in a way. But there's no time to dilly-dally. Thomas, von Franz, and the doctor are like, we got to go. They get to his manor. Thomas is ready to strike the final blow. The men push the thing off of the casket. Thomas strikes down, and oh my god, Herr Nock, what are you doing here? Herr Nock is there, metal stake in his titties, and is dead. He's just like, bleh, bleh. I don't really think Herr Nock gets an RIP moment, but you know what? Let me know. Let me know if that's what we should give him. I don't forgive him for the whole pigeon nonsense earlier. That really upset me. Gross. But Thomas is like, where's Orlok? And von Franz is like, we don't have time. We gotta burn this shit down so that way he has no place to rest. Because famously, as you know, vampires have to go back to their original resting place, and Orlok did transport a ton of dirt, so he was in his resting place. But if you destroy it, where else is he gonna go? He can't make it back to Transylvania. That's a 3-week trip. We've seen it. And you can't book a ship during a plague. That shit's not available. So Thomas takes a beat and he's like, I know where Orlok is. He's with Ellen, isn't he? Von Franz is like, yes. And so Thomas is like, I gotta go to Ellen. He takes off, but von Franz is having the time of his life burning down this building. He was born to burn down a building. Ellen has lured Orlok into her house, and she gives herself willingly to him the third night. It's what she has to do. And they're, I think, doing the nasty, and Orlok starts sucking the blood from her. But then daylight breaks, and he's like, girl, I gotta go. But she's like, no. Keep drinking. Just don't mind that silly old thing. And he's like, how can I refuse? It tastes like lilacs. The sun is rising. Orlok dies in Ellen's arm. Thomas bursts in. He's like, Ellen! And she reassures him with her dying breath that all is okay, and then dies. R.I.P. Ellen, you really carry this entire movie. But this is how we get my favorite meme from this entire thing.
And she's scrabbling around to get them back on again, but even before she can get her knickers on, I've seen everything. I've seen it all.
And then we get this stunning image of a crispy Orlok lying on top of Ellen with lilacs spread all around the bed as the morning breaks, bathing the once cold world in morning light. The Nosferatu. Whew. That was a lot. Okay. So what do we take away from this? What do we take away from this entire movie? This cinematic experience? It's a very well thought out and very tight movie. I think my hesitation with this movie comes from my own expectations. Yes, vampires are scary, but I thought this movie was going to be scary. And I don't think Eggers' mission to like stake the hot vampire really worked because I'm sorry, but everybody, man, woman, and rats is lusting after Orlok. Also check in with the TikTok girlies because they are like frothing and foaming at the mouth for this man. Do I fall into this demographic? I would say yes, but it's the big flesh wound in the back of his head that would make me like, ugh, you know? I wouldn't want to be kissing him and then my finger accidentally slip between the flesh of his head. That just feels gross. I guess I wanted this movie to be scarier, but this is like a true gothic horror movie, like at its best. Admittedly, I do have a hard time buying into a gothic horror. I love the concept, love the story. The execution though, and like, I would say the pacing mostly, is just very slow for me. Call me the pacing police because like guys, I'm so sorry. I hate a movie that kind of drags. Keep me engaged. I want to feel time moving by quickly without any skill being sacrificed, you know? I think that's just, maybe that's an editing thing. I'm not sure where in the process that pacing kind of like falters, but I don't know. I feel meh about the pacing in this. Are these concepts of sex and death based very much around like 19th century ideas? Yes. But guys, like that was his mission and I think he did it. Like he achieved what he wanted to do. But like also look at your states and how they're talking about sex and like all these like concepts that they're deeming as taboo. Much like today, and to be fair, even in the Victorian era, you couldn't talk about sex because it was a very taboo subject. So the closest thing you could talk to about ideas of eroticism was death. So I think the movie achieved its mission, yet I'm still wanting, you know? But everyone in this movie is acting their fucking asses off. Lily Rose Depp is putting her entire Elenacy into this movie. Like, good for her. But all of this to say that I give Nosferatu an A-. I will revisit this movie in the future and like, maybe something else will just click, but for right now, that's all I got. But I'm just excited to see what Eggers makes next. He's a visionary with a very unique voice, and I'm fully on board for whatever it is that he does. But let me know what you thought about Nosferatu in the comments below. I will also leave a link in the description for like the script and all the other like resources that I used throughout this. As always, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what movie you want me to talk about next. But until the next time, bye!